Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Creature Club. I am your host, Mikey DC, and with me, as always, is Daniel White.
Hello.
And Tim Porter.
That's me in this corner.
On this show, we talk about monsters from the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. We go through the monster manual and we talk about the monster. We just go into a big old heaping load of detail. Today we are talking about the pretty spooky and scary looking guy, the Cloaker. Guys, how are you doing this week? How are we doing?
Feeling good. Feeling lively, you know? Ready for this one. Ready to dive right in.
Yeah, you ready? I am not ready for this. Dan, what about you?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's been really warm, like, for the last 2 weeks.
It has been.
And I'm just about ready for summer to end. I'm like a rain boy at heart. Like, I love it when it rains. I love the cold. Like, so
Yeah.
I've had my window open in my room for, I think, solidly the last, like, over 200 hours, because otherwise my room gets quite warm.
Yeah.
So it's nice, and I've enjoyed lots of lunches out in the sun, but like I'm just about ready for summer to kind of pack it in, and we can go back to your regular scheduled broadcast of rain.
I have some bad news for you, Daniel. It's not going to happen for a little while.
I'm just gonna walk around with a hose. That's it.
Oh, perfect.
I'll make my own rain.
It's a really, really big watering can.
Irish summer is like 1 week, so I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be back to rain soon.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to wait until the leaving cert ends, and then it'll be back to normal.
Yeah, maybe even have the fabled D&D outside.
Oh, sir, can we have it outside? Oh, it's such a nice day. Oh, please. For fuck's sake, such chancers.
Yeah. We're doing the Cloaker today. What does he look like for our people at home who don't have this book?
He kind of looks like a spiky manta ray, mostly, with a big old lump of a tail, kind of spiny. Mostly black, you know.
And he has a head as well.
He does.
Yeah, no, but manta rays don't really have heads on.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Sorry.
Yeah, I understood it after a second, but
Don't
initially
you laugh.
I was like,
I'll beat you up.
oh no, he's following through. Yeah, they're a bit like I'd say like a bat combined with a manta ray. Probably my explanation. They've kind of got like a bit of a, like, you know, sort of a more centralized body, but they've got that long tail that carries on. They've got two big kind of leathery wings, but the wings are a lot more like the side fins of a manta ray. But as you said, Mikey, it has got like a distinct head rather than just having like a mouth.
Yeah, but although like the older Cloakers, like in the first edition and second edition, just third edition is like 5th edition. But yeah, in first edition and second edition, they look like a manta ray, where their head is kind of where a manta ray's face, I guess. Is that a face?
To be. Yeah, it is kind of their face. It's their mouth and their gills and stuff is all down there. But if you look up
they're creepy.
the artwork from that period, it's very up and down. There's like quite spooky, creepy ones, and then there's just hilarious ones that looks like somebody just photoshopped like Dracula's face onto like a bed sheet. It's just
it's great.
Cool.
Just look up Cloaker 2E D&D. Make sure it's 2E, second edition. It is hilarious. But yeah, that's really it. He's supposed to be he's kind of supposed to be leathery, almost, like on him. He's supposed to be indistinguishable from a cloak, like an adventurer's cloak that you would wear. So
that's where
that's kind of
supposedly
the
gets his name from, the old Cloaker.
So yeah, supposedly, maybe he did.
We have some alternate theories, but we won't get into them.
Yeah, that's an entirely different podcast.
It's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Cool.
So how long has he been in the game for? He has been here since first edition of AD&D, and he made his debut in the module Secret of the Slaver's Stockade.
Yeah.
What is that one? Daniel, do you know a little bit on that one?
I don't, unfortunately, other than it's exactly what it sounds like. It's to do with a group called the Slave Lords, who are about as nice as you'd expect. The Cloaker makes a relatively small appearance. It's basically in one room. It's like a kind of a novelty encounter.
It very much is.
One thing I did want to mention, actually, because we're talking about the earlier editions, is if you look up the earlier editions of the monster, it actually looks a lot more like that manta ray that it's clearly inspired by, because it does have. I mean, obviously, there's the second edition art, which is, well, it's something, but but the kind of initial AD&D art looks a lot more reminiscent of a manta ray because that like mouth and head is kind of as it's part of the body rather than being distinct.
It's a very like eerie, scary kind of drawing. Actually, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah,
that like very early edition drawing they have artwork.
The little kind of diddly fingers it has. It's super creepy.
Yeah. Almost silly, but it's still kind of very creepy looking. You know.
But yeah, it's survived all the way through every edition. Not that they really have to survive. They kind of bring everything on and pile everything on. But it's has its pride of place here in the old 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
So in case you didn't really catch it, it's not a mythological creature, not from history. It's just a D&D soul, like a solely D&D monster that they made.
Yeah.
You know, kind of one of those ones. So let's pop into the book here. Let's
do it.
Read what's in this book.
Cloakers earned their names for the resemblance they bear to dark, leathery cloaks. Lurking in remote dungeons and caves, these stealthy predators wait to slay lone or injured prey stumbling through the darkness.
Which isn't very nice.
You're right, Tim. It isn't very nice. Full marks.
Although maybe it's a little bit more merciful, because if something dies slowly in a cave that's been injured or left alone, you know, just wipe it out real quick and everything will be better, right? Because it's hungry, it needs to survive. It's a circle of life and all that jazz.
And it moves us all.
Yeah. So that's just a short, brief description of its kind of physical-y stuff and how it do.
Yeah. So the rest of the lore describes here is basically what we described there in that first paragraph, but in more detail. There's not really a lot, and I don't mean this as an insult. There's not really much else to the creature. It appears as a cloak, so it's able to sneak up on people. It's pretty quiet. When we get to its abilities, we'll see that it's trained in stealth, so it's able to remain undetected very easily. And of course, because it lives underground, it can see easily in the dark.
One thing it says here that he kind of likes to hang around, sneak behind like humanoid people, and then when they get weakened, that's when he pounces on them. You know, kind of sneaks in and waits for the opportunity to really go in for the kill. But that's really it. Yeah.
Yeah. It also says, and in earlier editions as well, they do have a certain intelligence, but they have like an alien mind to most humanoids. And here it has, under its Haunting Moan title, it describes its communication as kind of a subsonic. So if your adventurers are walking through a cave, they might feel the vibration in the air, but they won't hear it. You'll just be like, well, your people are walking and they feel just the air vibrate just the slightest, like maybe their hair on their arms stand up, and they have this haunting moan that has particular effects.
Yeah, and it also talks about well, actually, sorry, it doesn't talk about it in this edition, but in the earlier editions, it talks about how it can use its moan to even like enslave creatures and kind of drive them mad and things like that. In this, it just makes them frightened.
Yes.
There's a great line actually in the earlier edition of the Cloaker where it says their mind is, though they are highly intelligent, their thought processes are alien to most races, and usually only magic users are able to communicate with them.
Yeah.
I like that touch, that either you use magic or maybe even the suggestion that the use of magic makes you alien enough that you can understand these things.
So now you can call your magic users in your parties aliens.
Yeah.
And weirdos and freaks. I suppose that is kind of what we do, because like, as D&D adventurers, you are the weirdos.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Yeah.
Hagrid, is that you?
Because otherwise, you know, everybody would just be an adventurer and they'd make millions and millions of dollars or euros or gold or whatever your currency is.
I play in euros.
My games are. It's interesting. He plays in euros.
D&D EU edition.
There's deep lore about how it's actually France a million years in the future.
Yeah.
And people are resettling it in medieval times, so everyone still uses euros. Unfortunately, inflation hasn't gone down, even though society is wiped out. So everything's very expensive.
Coins have disappeared.
Although I do like the idea of like a fantasy ass guy going like, "Here, take $2."
Yeah.
And your two Washingtons on paper. Yeah. Cool. So that's our Cloaker boy. Shall we move on to a little bit of Dinner Town, our old meat and potatoes, if we will?
Yeah, there's a lot to get on. There's a lot to hear, so I think we should jump on.
Let's do some boogie.
It's a big stat block. Yeah, let's do some boogie?
Yeah, let's do some boogie.
Okay. All right. Is that the new segue?
Yeah,
into
that's
that
what
it
the
now?
cool
Is that what
kids
we're
are
doing?
saying now.
We need to workshop a little bit more, I think. But
I think a lot more,
we'll,
I'll be honest, but...
cool. All right, let's do it. Alrighty, welcome to the meat and potatoes section of Creature Club. I am still Mikey DC.
I'm still Daniel.
I'm still
Just
Tim.
in case anyone
Yeah,
forgot.
I'm sorry. There isn't ads. I don't know why I did that.
That's fine.
All right, Cloaker. He's a large aberration, chaotic neutral. So there you go. Armor class 14. That's his natural armor. Hit points 78. With two d12s of a hit die, and he has a speed 10 with a 40 speed for flying.
He is a slow, sluggish mover on his
Yeah,
feet.
but of course he's mainly going to be flying, I'd say. All right, so strength 17, dex 15, constitution 12, intelligence 13, okay, wisdom 12, charisma 14. So that's like a really good stat line for like
It's a
player.
It's a really interesting stat line. It's
Yeah.
interesting to me that it's a large creature, but it appears as a cloak, because I would have thought that a creature that appears as a cloak would be medium,
yeah.
Yeah.
because that's one hell of a cloak. But I suppose maybe the idea is that it unfolds when it kind of attacks you.
It's probably that it kind of like folds itself in half, and like in the illustration, the underside of his wings are white and the outsides are black. Maybe he like folds himself in half, and that makes it look like slightly smaller. Maybe I'm trying to apply some logic to this.
I don't think it's a big deal. I just thought it was an interesting
Or
observation.
just like he's a big man's cloak.
Yeah,
you know,
or like a giant or
Well-
a troll.
No, big man. That's what I call
Okay.
him. Not giant.
Okay. So and then interestingly, the mental stats are interesting to me because its charisma is its highest non-physical stat,
Yeah.
which is kind of
Yeah, that's
surprising.
strange.
And then additionally, the fact that it has a higher intelligence than a wisdom. I mean, it's good across the board. Obviously, there's no denying that. But it is interesting to me, like what those numbers suggest. That like
Yeah.
it's more persuasive and negotiable and manipulative than it is sort of cunning and canny and sly. You know, it might be surprisingly direct with adventurers who can communicate with it.
Yeah.
Skills, it's trained in stealth, which is obviously very, very handy for what it does. It's kind of an ambush predator. It's got 60 feet of dark vision, because who hasn't? And it has a passive perception of 11, because it is untrained and has a +1 wisdom modifier. It speaks 2 languages, deep speech and undercommon, so they're both kind of appropriate. I thought it was interesting, actually, that it's an aberration rather than a monstrosity, but I think it's an aberration because it lives underground, and they also kind of gave it deep speech and undercommon, and gave it this kind of supernatural moaning ability that's slightly Chthonian, like it drives you mad, that kind of vibe. So I think that's kind of what they went for. Like
Aberration seems to be those kind of like ancient kind of
I get that.
eldritch beasts,
Yeah.
kind of
Particularly
stuff.
alien.
Eldritch and alien, rather than like just kind of dangerous and strange, I suppose.
I guess from what we have talked about, you have the aboleth and you have the chul, and you have more.
Yeah,
Others,
like mind flayers, I
don't
think,
know.
are
Actually-
aberrations, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unsurprisingly.
like beholders, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm just kind of going with what we talked about.
Oh, sorry,
already.
yeah, of course, what we talked about already. Yeah, yeah. Like Beholder is another great example, because again, they're kind of about like the mind and insanity and madness and dreams and things like that.
Yeah.
So he kind of fits in that family a little bit.
Yeah, and he's a challenge rating 8 monster, which surprised me actually a little bit.
Yeah.
They do mention in the description that it's sort of it describes how like they favor attacking like overwhelming single enemies very quickly, and that they use their tail for defense, but they can very rarely fight a group of foes. So that's interesting, because that makes me think about how it would deal with a group of adventurers, because obviously that's what you're thinking about. But yeah, so it's a surprisingly tough monster, even though when you look at its defensive stats, it has a relatively low armor class and not a lot of hit points. I mean, you know, there will be player characters of an equal level to that challenge rating who will maybe have more hit points.
Kind of lends itself to the whole like hit and run idea, which I think isn't great for like a challenge level 8. It kind of doesn't make sense to me that it's like, oh, hit you and run away, because like I would have thought that like the challenge rating 8 would be like it itself could take on 4 level 8 characters, and this really doesn't imply that very heavily to me, because level 8,
well,
one wizard spell could just poof them.
Yeah, well, because just by looking at, it has a lot of things it can
yeah,
do.
Exactly. I was just about to say.
We'll get into it. Actually, well, let's bring this point up like again later,
All right.
like at the end when we talk about this.
Good idea.
But that is good. That is a good point of discussion, Tim. Sure. So we'll continue with that.
Because I completely agree. I think it's interesting because you look at those stats and I think they are slightly deceiving, because even as we look at the first ability the Cloaker has, damage transfer, which is when it's attached to a creature, which we'll get to, but it's basically whenever it grapples someone. It only takes half damage from all attacks. There's no specification on melee, ranged, or spell. All attacks deal half damage, and importantly, the creature it's attached to takes the other half.
Yeah.
So this is like super resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if the fight is going to go anything like our rugged smothering fight, he's going to be on somebody during that fight. It's silly, but it's going to be true. He's going to be keep attacking, and that means when anyone tries to attack him, then he's just going to attack his mate, and he's going to take. He almost has like double of his hit points there. Yeah, it's almost
basically
like that.
exactly. False appearance. While it remains motionless without its underside exposed, so in other words, if it's got it back to you, it is indistinguishable from a dark leather cloak.
Indeed.
And then finally, it has disadvantage while it's in light.
Yeah.
It has light sensitivity, which is that it has disadvantage on attack rolls and perception checks that rely on sight while in bright light, which is an interesting restriction, actually. But we'll get to that, I guess.
It's a nice little flavor thing, actually. You can kind of picture like your adventurers kind of with torches go like, "Ha, back you fiend," and he's like, "Eh."
And turns around and flies
Yeah,
away.
exactly. Cool. So actions. Tim, do you want to go into these?
Sure. Its first ability is its multi-attack, as most of these are. The Cloaker makes 2 attacks, one with its bite and one with its tail. Its bite attack, melee weapon attack, +6 to hit. Reach 5 feet, 1 creature, hit 10 damage, 2d6 plus 3 piercing damage. And if the target is large or smaller, the Cloaker attaches to it. If the Cloaker has advantage against the target, the Cloaker attaches to the target's head, and the target is blinded and unable to breathe while the Cloaker is attached. While attached, the Cloaker can make this attack only against the target and has advantage on the attack roll. The Cloaker can detach itself by spending 5 feet of its movement. A creature, including the target, can take its action to detach the Cloaker by succeeding on a DC 16 strength check. Whew.
Yep.
That is a mouthful.
That was so yeah, that's a cool one.
Hefty.
Yeah.
And then its tail is a melee weapon attack, +6 to hit again, but it has a reach of 10 feet and 1 creature, and it has 1d8 plus 3 or 7 slashing damage.
What's interesting, is immediately what I'm thinking is both of these attacks are very low damage for a challenge rating 8 monster. So I suspect that when they talk about, when it has that high challenge rating, it's because it'll get a lot of turns to deal damage, because it'll survive a lot longer than you'd expect.
Maybe it's that there's suggesting to kind of really lean into the idea that it'll only attack people if they've been quite badly injured. Like, this thing is hard to fight because it's intelligent enough to know that it can take a weak or injured looking creature. Like, you could lose a character to this creature.
True enough. Okay, the moan. Each creature within 60 feet of the Cloaker that can hear its moan, and that isn't an aberration, that's an interesting distinction, must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw or become frightened until the end of the Cloaker's next turn. If a creature's saving throw is successful, the creature is immune to the Cloaker's moan for the next 24 hours. And finally, one last real long ability. Phantasms recharges after a short or long rest. The Cloaker magically creates 3 illusory duplicates of itself if it isn't in bright light. The duplicates move with it and mimic its actions, shifting positions so as to make it impossible to track which Cloaker is the real one. If the Cloaker is ever in an area of bright light, the duplicates disappear. Whenever any creature targets the Cloaker with an attack or harmful spell while a duplicate remains, that creature rolls randomly to determine whether it targets the Cloaker or one of the duplicates. A creature is unaffected by this magical effect if it can't see or if it relies on senses other than sight. Duplicate has the Cloaker's AC and uses its saving throws. If an attack hits a duplicate or if a duplicate fails a saving throw against an effect that deals damage, the duplicate disappears. So very similar to the spell Mirror Image, exactly. I think Mirror Image is like 1d4 plus 1 images. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of Pathfinder. But yeah, I don't know if it has a different number, but this has a fixed number of 3 duplicates.
It says, if you have 3 duplicates, you must roll a 6 or higher to change the attack target to a duplicate. Oh, so I think it... Sorry, I misread that. 3 illusory.
Okay, cool.
Duplicates of yourself, so it's always 3.
Cool. So this ability is really interesting and very unique. I haven't looked at earlier editions, but it doesn't have that power in fifth edition. Sorry, in fourth edition even. It also doesn't have the power in 5th edition. No, it does have the power in 5th edition.
I couldn't find it anywhere else either, or any other mention of it in the histories.
So I don't know if this is just something totally new, or if maybe, and this might be the reason that we can't find it initially, is because there are variants of the Cloaker, such as the Sea Cloaker and the Resplendent Cloaker and the Shadow Cloaker and lots of other different ones. So maybe the idea is that those have these powers and they're just taking them and simplifying them down to one monster.
Yeah, probably. Like the Moan ability, in the first edition, had 4 levels of ability. Like first, it could kind of zombify people, or it could then, I think, make people scared, and then it could make people sick, and then it could hold person essentially for its final ability. So it's changed quite dramatically over the years, apparently. But I think it could definitely be that they're trying to lump some of the favorite abilities from the
or just most interesting
into this one.
Quickly before we move on with this, how do you feel about the stat block now, Tim? About its health and
not really
challenge rating?
Convinced. You guys, I think I might have found the first monster that I'm not a big fan of in the monster manual. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
That's challenge rating 8 suggests to me that your characters have been canny and they've been smart and they've worked their way through. Because if you start at level 1 and get to level 8, you know the game well enough, even if this is your first campaign. And it has to be either the guile of the DM that makes it a challenge 8, but then you could do that with virtually any of the other monsters, I think. So I'm finding myself hard pressed to come up with an excuse for this guy being challenge rating 8, apart from its kind of cool abilities, which aren't even particularly difficult to get around. Like a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw on the Moan is not particularly hefty,
Yeah, but the reason that's as low as it is because of the fact that the Cloaker doesn't have great mental stats, but also my assumption is that they were careful not to make it too much of a case of you fail one saving throw and then you become frightened and then you can't do anything. Although what's interesting is that you were only frightened until the end of the Cloaker's next turn, so it's actually a relatively short frightened effect. But people just fail saving throws all the time, even simple ones. They just roll low and they just the ranger trained in wisdom saving throws who has a +7 just rolls a 2 and it's you failed. And then idiot barbarian or whatever, passes, rolls like a 16 and just passes, doesn't even have to crit, just does well. And saving throws are weird because they just they're a lot more random because your bonuses don't get as high generally, and also because everyone has to make checks, so there's just more chance of someone failing. If someone attacks one person, it's I have to beat your AC, but when everyone has to make a saving throw, chances are someone will just fail.
What I find funny actually with the phantasms, it says recharges after a short or long rest. It's kind of a strange thing to put on a monster that it's basically saying use it once.
Yeah,
because
in a way it is. Yeah,
a lot of the time your monster is not going to be resting. Like, it's possible because D&D,
Yeah.
fuck, anything's possible.
I think that might even be like a way that the book is also nudging you to say, okay, if you start fighting, run away and rest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I gotcha. Cool. Yeah, that's that's all I got in the stat block anyway. I just kind of noticed that. Has a couple of cool little bits and bobs, but yeah, he's all right. Dan, any last words on the stat block?
Any last words?
On the stat block specifically, any last words generally?
Any last words? I hold up a gun.
I commend my soul to any god who can find it. No, on the stat block, that's stolen, by the way. That's not an original quote.
That's all right. I didn't think so.
It's from Terry Pratchett's book. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's the last words of a famous thief.
Right,
He's about to be hung. Or hanged? You hang people?
Hanged, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's probably either.
Yeah.
Well, they don't mind.
People are
they're
hanged.
not normally around to complain. So the only thing I was going to say about this, that's fine. The only thing I was going to say about the stat block is, the only thing I can think in particular is like I'm thinking about like the bright light restriction, and how, as far as I understand, that would mean that because if I understand the light levels in D&D correctly, there is darkness, which is obviously no one can see except people with dark vision who get to treat it as dim light, and then there's dim light, which is everyone has disadvantage to see except people with dark vision who don't because they treat it as normal light, and there's normal light, which is everyone can see normally, and then there's bright light, which is like out in the sun on a sunny day. And the only distinction is that like certain things like this cloaker or like vampires are affected by bright light, but aren't affected by like light.
Like I think the drow
If that makes sense.
character has light
Yes,
sensitivity.
yes.
So
Yes, and kobolds as well,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think like about. No, this is an encounter idea. Sorry. But no, I don't think I have anything else to say about the stat block other than that I honestly think when you consider the fact that when it grabs onto something, it'll be taking half damage from everything, and whatever else you're hitting will also be taking half damage. And then the fact that like it's a DC 16 strength check to remove the creature is actually fairly high. Just generally, like it's any check over 15 is generally pretty high. Like 15 or over, I suppose. So it's a relatively tough check. It's not a check you'd expect people to succeed easily. They'd have to either be kind of well equipped for it or just get lucky. And as well as that, it takes a whole action. So when you consider the fact that at 8th level, a fighter can make 2 attacks with every attack, or even 3, no, just 2.
Also, because he's smart, he can easily like pick out the spellcasters as well. That can be a thing. Yeah, exactly. And also, and seeing how encounters go, he's going to be on somebody's head, like for most of the immediately, and also for most of the encounter. So he will be taking half damage, as I mentioned before.
So I think that's really all there is to say about the stat block. Maybe we move on to the encounters and talk a little bit more about this guy.
All right, let me just push this big button right here.
No, that's the wrong button.
I need some sort of like wait.
That's the Foley button.
Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit of Foley work for me. Bam, button. I'm sorry, guys. This is terrible. It's a terrible bit.
It's all right. You pressed the button that brought us into the sort of
mindset,
the sorbet between meals that like cleanses your palate, and then you can take a little bit of time.
very nice.
Sounds good.
So hi, welcome to the cleanser round. Just remember to take some time off the internet and just spend some time outside with your friends. It's really good for your health. You'll really
like
appreciate
those
it in the long run.
health things, like maybe go outside for a bit. Talk to your friends.
Shut up, Nintendo. Shut up. I want to play more Fire Emblem.
Shut up, Nintendo. I'm not finished Fire Emblem yet.
I still got this map to do.
I still have to get all my characters to get married and have kids.
Yeah.
And then use
Oh,
those
it's a great
kids to
dating sim,
fight to
guys.
the death.
Yeah, and then marry those kids, and then the cycle continues.
The cycle
it
of
actually
life and
doesn't,
death.
but all right. To dessert. Doo-loo-loo-loo-loo. How are we going to use them?
So here's the thing about the Cloaker that I think. I think the Cloaker is a perfectly fine encounter for a level 8 party, as long as it is not the first encounter for the level 8 party. And this is something that has been talked about recently.
For sure.
I think we're all people who watch Matt Colville's videos, and he did that video a little while ago talking about getting to 6. Are you familiar with?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it actually.
Okay.
I haven't seen it that one yet.
It's kind of a aspirational concept for 5th edition. So there's a bit in the Dungeon Master's Guide in 5th edition that says on the average adventuring days you are expected to have 6 combat encounters. Yes. So obviously no one does this. Like it is a fantasy. It is like it's like functional communism. It doesn't. It's not like it doesn't exist. It's a gorgeous idea, but no one does it. Like
actually, I think that's kind of bad. Actually, it's a bad idea because it's kind of forced combat. Forced action for a story.
Well, it depends. Like I think it's really context driven. Like, I feel like, for example, if I were to use, obviously, popular movie and D&D reference material, Lord of the Rings, I would say that on the day of the Battle of Helm's Deep, that the Fellowship had 6 encounters.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, I think there's games, I think there's adventuring days where the party has 6 combat encounters. I don't think it's every day.
No.
So so what's weird about 5th edition is that you're not really expected to have 5 to 6 combat encounters every day. So yeah, it's 6. You're not expected to have 6 every day. 6 is aspirational, but the game has very little in terms of design to inflict a long-term injury on you, right? Like if you with the exception of hit dice, every mechanic fully refreshes every day. And aside from, I guess, some magic items and some specific class abilities, the cleric's commune ability, I think, is once a week, for example. The one where you can just literally ask your god, can you intervene and help me? And you roll a D100 and you add your level or whatever. You'd try to get under your level. So it's really unlikely. But obviously the idea is that at higher levels it becomes easier. But the idea is that if you succeed, you can't do it again for a week. But with some very rare... Yeah. So with relatively rare exceptions, everything on a character sheet resets after a long rest. So it's unusual that there's a lot of that that you would try to emphasize staggering out combat over multiple days because it wouldn't really matter because you're just fully recharged after one sleep. So the reason I bring all this up is because the Cloaker seems like a great example of a monster you would fight when you're not having the first encounter of an adventuring day.
If they're going to be hunting people that are damaged, they have to be damaged.
Yeah,
first.
Exactly. And even something as simple as they benefit from the party having access to less of their resources.
The more tired they are, the more effective.
Yeah, and on that subject, that's where I think the Phantasm ability is important. Because I think that because this is the idea that almost came to me fully formed when I was talking about the idea of light levels. Almost the idea that you get a low level party, right? Maybe a level 5 party, and they're in this big massive kind of maze cavern that's pierced with shafts of light in places because they can still see above them, but they can't get out, and they're trying to find a way out of this massive labyrinth, and there's a Cloaker pursuing them, but the Cloaker won't attack them if they're in a place of light, but it'll attack them whenever they're in the darkness and then retreat and attack them again later. And that's where it'll use that short rest ability, where it can regain the use of its phantasms if it's used them to survive. It almost becomes like a slasher film, right? Where the Cloaker is the murderer and the party are trying to avoid them. And maybe you bring along some NPCs who can get killed quickly to kind of really get that tone going of oh my god, we're trapped in here with them.
Our guide. Oh, maybe it could eat their guide, and that's why they don't know how to get out anymore.
Yeah, so that's where I see the Cloaker. I see the Cloaker as kind of the two ways I see it being used are, firstly, it attacks the party on its own, and it's on its own, and it's the second or third or maybe even more fight that the party have had that day, and it takes advantage of the fact that the party have already fought before. I'd really, if you are doing this, if you think you want to use the Cloaker to attack the party while after they've had a fight, I would say they absolutely attack while the party is resting. Like, unless the party have been, exactly, unless the party has been incredibly clever and really, really like set up their camp so that it can't get attacked, you attack them during the short rest, because that means they're still weak from the previous fight, which is, obviously beneficial for the Cloaker, but also makes it clear that the Cloaker is clever and it's paying attention, and even have it do something simple as, it attacks the party, but if the party start to turn the fight around, it just runs. It just bolts, like, immediately, and see how the party interact with that. The other way I'd use a Cloaker, which I think would be actually really fun, would be having a lot of fodder enemies around, and the Cloaker is the real threat. So like, you go into this big cavern, and there's like 17, like, I don't know, 17's too many. There's like, 8 orcs or whatever, like literally like orc, like CR 1/2 monster, and your party are like level 8 or whatever, and they're like, really, orcs? And then they like start fighting the orcs, and then like the wizard's like, yeah, get him, and then just Cloaker drops on the wizard.
Yeah, I don't like what's coming to my head right now is, in Zelda, the wall masters.
Oh
Zelda,
yeah,
the kind of the hands that come down and grab you and like pick you up. I can picture like that kind of like encounter, but of course, like, you're fighting orcs or something, or you're trying to get through a room and he's just hiding around the place and he's wants to grab you, and then maybe this is a particular strong one. Then when he grabs you, then he takes you down like a lot of health or something. Maybe that might be fun for like a low level party, where throw one of these guys in and just kind of, you want to make them run through it instead of actually fighting this guy because he's a tough guy. And then. Yeah, and then later when you're higher level, you fight it and like, I'm stronger now. I know all your techniques.
I've studied your moves. Actually, on that idea, DC, the idea that you're like going through a dungeon and there's a Cloaker in there that's high level, what you could do, which would be kind of fun, is if there was an artifact in the dungeon that produced bright light. So if the party can find that, they can scare off the Cloaker, but until they do it, it's like harrying them the whole time.
Do you remember our... sadly, Tim, you weren't around for this one, but do you remember our bullet idea with the bullet dungeon? This reminds me of that bullet dungeon. It's like another... It can be
it's another monster-themed dungeon, yeah.
Yeah, it can be in that series of dungeons of, like, try and get the monster away kind of thing. That's cool. I like that. Kind of like a fun house. Is that a fun house dungeon?
Yeah. Kind of fun housey, like kind of strange. It's not necessarily super fun housey. It is almost... It's very gamist. I think it feels fun housey because it's kind of gamist, right? Like, it's more like a Zelda dungeon than it is like, oh, this is the tomb of the... Like, whatever, like... It's like, no, it's just a weird cave and there's a bad monster in it. Look out. Like,
yeah.
Which is fine, like, but like, there's that interesting thing, which is something that I've like started to kind of move towards, which is like, D&D is a game, and one of the pitfalls you can fall into when you're running D&D or even when you're playing D&D is this belief that somehow acknowledging it's a game makes it worse, like somehow that like breaks it. But like, immersion is such a weird concept that shouldn't exist to begin with. I'm pretty sure like it's interesting because like immersion is like, immersion is the idea that like you play a game and you feel yourself in the world. Like if your character is scared, you feel scared for your character. It's almost like a sort of a version of sympathy. But like there's and this could be completely anecdotal, and it could be like allegorical. I could be completely wrong, but as far as I understand, there's a lot of people who say like immersion doesn't make sense, because if you ask someone, like, they will be able to very clearly say, oh, no, the things I did in that game are not me, like, that's someone else. Like, they're very, like, it's it's all the studies about, like, how violence in video games doesn't cause violence in real life. The idea that, like, we are very, very good at going, no, that was just a story, that wasn't real. But at the same time, we're able to trick ourselves into, like, wanting to be in the story. Like, we lie to ourselves because we want to be immersed. And, like, what I found a lot of the time is that if you like almost let your players in behind the conceit a little bit and say like, no, like, you're going to do this dungeon with this weird monster and here's the rules of the dungeon. Like, maybe you let them experience it once or twice, but then you tell them these are the rules of the dungeon that you're playing in. Like, they won't be like, oh, this isn't real anymore. Like they'll be like, okay, cool. Like, now I know what the rules are, and because I know what the rules are, I can play the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine that.
I've fell into that trap before where I when I'm making a dungeon, it kind of stops me sometimes where I want to make kind of like a Zelda video gamey, like very, very video gamey kind of dungeon, but I'm like, D&D is... What's going through my head is like, well, but that's not realistic, you know, but that's really stopping me a lot of the time, because I think for some reason, I think that if I do put a video gamey dungeon, I'm like disappointing my players, because they want to be in this immersive world, but... even though I'm pretty sure my players would love, like, I'm pretty sure you guys
absolutely.
would love a dungeon like that,
like,
you know?
Completely. And like, even I even think like it's interesting because, like, so an example of this is like the last game I ran for my group, where so one of the systems I'm using, and Tim is one of my players. He wasn't at the last game, but he's one of my players. So you can account for this. Is I use a random encounter system when you guys travel through the overworld, and in the last game, I asked someone to roll for the random encounter, and they noticed that the previous time they traveled, they didn't roll for an encounter. So they asked me, you know, if you don't mind me asking, what's the sort of the rules for the random encounter? And I just explained to them, like, I didn't feel like, oh, I can't tell you, that will break the rules. Like, I just said, oh, well, the last time you traveled to a place where you'd left some allies, so the route was safe, and you traveled that way before, so I didn't think you would run into danger. But now you're traveling to somewhere you haven't been before, and you don't have any allies here who you know can keep you safe. So that's why I'm making you roll for an encounter. And I just explained that in full, and they went, "Oh, okay, cool." Like it was obvious to me that like they almost appreciated, like, now I know like why the things in the game are happening. Like I've like I didn't explicitly tell them like every result on the table, although they understand the table enough that like for their own benefit to make it fair. But like I think explaining it didn't like break the game. I think it only made them go, oh, now I know why the things that are happening. In the same way that like when I roll a 20, everyone gets at the table gets excited. Like, why is that? You know, like imagine not explaining to someone the rules of a crit 20, or like, oh, you know, how do damage dice work? Like, imagine how weird that would be. Wouldn't that be insane? Like, and yet we do that with other stuff. We just don't tell people how the game works. And it's like, how can you expect someone to have fun in a game where they don't know the rules? Like,
that kind of stuff is particularly great when it, I think, especially for like tabletop games where it is a heavy role play, because if you're DMing to players, every player at that table is a prospective future DM. So giving them insights into how you play the game and how you have seen the game played and your favorite ways to play the game, you know, that'll influence how they play the game in the future. And I love that kind of community.
I know what you mean, almost like inheriting other people's ideas and skill sets, and you know, it's almost like evolutionary in a way.
Very much so,
yeah, like all the best writers steal, you know. Like they just have to have obscure references, and if you can be that obscure reference to one of your players, fantastic. If you inspire somebody to come up with a cool encounter, that's like watching your child grow up.
Like
it's probably not as powerful, but yes,
I think it is definitely.
It's more powerful. Children are worthless.
More powerful. D&D brings people together. I suppose children do as well.
But back to the topic at hand, the Cloaker, I actually think he would be almost perfect for like a random encounter table, because he's just kind of like silly enough to just like, you wouldn't really have him as like a big bad at the end of a dungeon. You would have him like, if you guys going through a cave and then you're like, okay, random encounter table, I'll throw a Cloaker at them. It'll be like a fun distraction, you know, for one encounter, you know, like it'll just be like a fight to do, because it'll be an interesting enough fight to do, but like it's not like the end of the world kind of fight, you know.
Maybe you could do like a random Cloaker table. Like if you roll a 1, he stays in the back. If you roll a 2, he swoops in. If you roll a 3, like maybe they see him on a relatively low perception check. Like, have him be an interaction that your players are having, like a distinct role that happens.
I like
for
the
Cloaker
image, but I don't know what it'll be like on a stat block. But I like the image of a giant Cloaker. It'll just look cool, I think. Just kind of him, like you know, like seeing like this, you know, black cave, and then like something that looks like a cloak starts to move. It's like almost like a giant cloak. It just looks very cool. It looks like a Bloodborne boss, you know. That's what's going on in my head right now. But I just wouldn't know how.
Well, actually, on that subject, have you seen the 4th edition monster?
Is there one?
So in 4th edition there is the Cloaker Ambusher, which is the Cloaker we have in this book, but there's also the Cloaker Lord, which is bigger and badder and more.
Okay. Does he have any special techniques passed down generation?
My signature move. He has an ability called Hypnotic Moan, which is a little like what's described before, the idea of making people into your thralls, where it dazes creatures for the round.
Classic aberration.
Classic, yes.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. 4E's funny because when we're doing this show, we get to like a monster, and then every one of these monsters that we do have like 5 versions of them in 4E, you know? Because it's very war gamey like inspired, because it kind of wants to go at like
exactly,
you're fighting races of these things, you know, and they all have different techniques that you're fighting against, which is cool. But
I mean, in 4th edition there was like a city of cloakers.
Right. Okay. That's
it was weird. Hang on, let me get the lore real quick. You'll like this.
That's kind of strange.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was 3rd edition. Here we go. This is fun. This entry also describes Ringlor Naroth, a cloaker city in the Underdark of the Forgotten Realms. Such cities are established when a cloaker lords draw the cloakers Ringlor, by the way, is double or at the start, so there you go. That's how edgy it is. Is ruled by 12 cloaker lords that can join their bodies together to form an orb of living shadow stuff called a conclave of shadows. This unity is thought to help them reach quick consensus in decisions of governance. It's
shadows.
Good for bureaucracy. Fear our powerful bureaucratic shadow
That's
technique.
definitely, when I look at this guy, I'm like, definitely, you know, he's a fucking bureaucrat. Look at this fucking
Look at this
manta.
guy. This is a civil servant if I've ever seen one.
Oh my god, this is
Cleaning up the streets.
Do you know when you just have to like write lore and you just don't think about it? You just
when someone pays you money to write lore.
You're just like, quick, give me some lore. Like, okay, Cloaker City.
All I can think is like, is someone writing that because they recently like had a run-in with like, you know, bureaucracy? Did they recently like?
They were just sick of it.
They were just like, they had to like, you know, they had to file some tax returns and then like reapply for a driver's license or something, and they've just been doing a lot of like paperwork recently, and it's like all they could think about when they were supposed to be like writing this like D&D lore, and they're like, I don't know, those super bureaucratic shadow technique. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, all those like lines he's been weighing, and he's just like doodling these guys like yes. And you know, if he kind of stands up a little bit, it looks like he's like wearing a double-breasted suit.
Oh yeah, a little bit because he has some buttons on his back.
I hope we're not coming across mean with this, but like it's just very funny.
When we were talking about encounters, I was considering leaning into how much I don't like the cloaker and being like, how I would use them is throw them into a fire. So, you know, not quite as mean as I was considering being.
That's a bit mean there, Tim. That's fine. Throw into
any book that has a cloaker in it, burn it. Say goodbye to my monster manual.
Yeah, Tim records next to a fire.
Yep. Always.
If you wanted to make a kind of a this is sort of an out there idea, but like if you wanted to make kind of a if you want to make kind of like a cloaker, almost more like trying to think of the word here, like symbiotic with other monsters. What could be cool is if you had a cloaker, and then because obviously it kind of folds in on itself when it's disguised as a cloak, if inside it had a shadow like the monster, the specter described much later in the monster manual. So like when it attacks you, it like flings out with its wings and a shadow jumps out, and now there's 2 monsters instead of 1. Which might also change up the way the fight works, because shadows want to, if I recall correctly, like strength drain and suffocate, and so does the cloaker. So now you've got like 2 people being suffocated by different monsters. So that could be kind of cool.
Hardcore.
Also, these guys would be really cool with our other aberrations. If you recall, in the episode about aboleths, we described a really fun aboleth boss fight. A single cloaker in that encounter could really make things interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
God, every time we bring back that aboleth boss fight, I just need to put an aboleth in a game. I need to make an aboleth adventure at some point. You know,
Aboleths are cool.
Yeah.
Our other aberration is our beholder.
Yep. It'd be interesting with beholders as well.
Pretty hefty.
He'll be fun in a beholder fight.
What's worth remembering is that they can actually communicate with beholders because they both have deep speech. So
Deep speech.
they
And
could make
undercommon.
so they could make deals with each other. The beholder could make an agreement with this cloaker that it will live in part of the beholder's lair and defend it from interlopers like the adventurers.
Yeah.
Chulls. You can be friends with chulls, maybe.
I mean, chulls are like
be buds.
you can't be friends with chulls, really.
You can't. I want that on a
You
t-shirt.
don't make friends with salad.
I want that on the t-shirt. Can't be friends with chulls.
Like they just don't have a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know, I think they could be used by cloakers, but I don't think. Actually, that's a good point. Chul have that thing where they can like if they like telepathically communicate with an aboleth, they like resume their position of subservience. You could do something cool where like a cloaker is able to imitate that telepathy using their subsonic voice.
Ooh.
So then it has like
pretty cool.
cloakers working for it, and because they both speak well, it understands deep speech but can't speak it, and the cloaker can speak deep speech. So if the cloaker was able to like give them like subsonic deep speech messages that they then acted out because they thought they were serving an aboleth, that could be a cool setup.
That'd
And
be very cool.
and you've got a great setup there where the Chul is CR4 and the Cloaker is CR8, so you've got a nice mini boss sort of ecology setting up there, nice and easy.
Yeah.
Or you could have the Chulls as your orcs, as we described them earlier.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
the Chulls
Yeah,
could fight them on the treasure hoard that the Chulls have accumulated or whatever, and then the Cloaker can just like swoop in.
Yeah.
and they'd actually work really well together. Just looking at their abilities here, obviously, the Chul can grapple people, which would set them up for the bite, but also the tentacles have a poison that paralyzes people. And as we recall from the bite ability of the Cloaker, you need advantage to grapple onto something. So obviously, if they're paralyzed, they give everything else advantage. So you can imagine the Chul using its tentacles to paralyze someone, and then the Cloaker leaps on them while they're paralyzed.
There you go.
So you've got a nice 1-2 punch in your encounter.
I'm thinking.
Much.
I'm thinking of so the idea of him like sneak in at the end of fights or like during fights. What if some sort of aberration he was working with wore him as a cloak? Like
Yeah.
I don't know what monster, maybe like a mind flayer, but
Ooh, that'd be cool.
yeah, was wearing him as a cloak, and then halfway through the fight with this mind flayer, the cloaker just pops off like, oh Jesus, and then like
Oh, God.
he starts to like flap it.
Sir, you've dropped your cloak. Oh my god.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of
This
like
is not what I expected.
might be a fun surprise, but I guess when you're fighting mind flayers, you don't really care about cloakers too much anymore.
Yeah.
But,
That might be a good way to set up a trap. Like maybe it's a lone mind flayer just walking through. Like you let your character spot him, and he's just walking, and your players start following him, and he does drop his cloak, and he just keeps walking, and then the cloaker leaps.
Can you
out
pick
at the
that up
players.
for me?
Could you get that
Winker
for me?
first. So one other thing, actually, just on the subject of someone wearing it as a cloak, I don't know if you guys recall, but way back when we talked about animated objects, we suggested the idea that you could fight an animated armor that is wearing a rug of smothering as a cloak.
Yeah.
You could go super high level and have an animated armor that's wearing a cloaker as a cloak.
Yeah, that's cool. And while we're on that, put a cloaker into the dungeon idea we had with the dungeon full of animated objects.
Ooh, yes. As like the one really, really dangerous cloak.
Yes, just
Ah!
just like throw it into like one wardrobe, and then there you go.
Next to an actual cloak of protection as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
1 in 2 chance. The bad cloak.
A red wire, blue wire. That's cool. Yeah, throw 'em, revisiting that fine episode. Yeah, I think that's a good time to stop it there. I like that.
Yeah.
I
Nice
think so
high
too.
note.
Yes.
A high note.
I did my best.
You sure did, Daniel.
I did my best. You can't take that away from me.
Thank you everybody for listening to Creature Club. It has been great. We have done cloakers. If you liked what you listened to, please consider subscribing to us on whatever thing you listen to us on, either be that iTunes or any other third-party software of whatever sort, or go onto our website, which is creatureclubpodcast.com, where you will get the episodes as well, and you can contact us with a contact session there, or use creatureclubpodcast@gmail.com to send us stuff or send us questions, whatever you want. whatever you want to do. We always like the idea of getting homebrews off you guys, so if you can do that, that'll be great.
Yeah, we've got a good number now.
Do we?
So I think we've got at least 7.
Oh boy, I didn't even know we had any at all. So
we've got quite a few from real life friend and friend of the show, Stephen Brady, and we also got, I think we got at least 1 or 2 from other people as well, but I can't recall.
We got
them off
one
the top of my
from
head.
Connor for the
Yes.
Mage.
oh
yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
did.
a classic.
Yeah.
Oh, we should do an episode on the Slime Mage.
Connor said he sent me a message like after the Centaur episode. He just said, "I caught up with the New Creature Club. I'm gonna make your OC a slime mage centaur." I was like, "Oh God, no!"
Yeah.
But yeah, keep sending us, guys. We're gonna do this episode soon. We don't want it all to be. We don't want it all to be friend of the podcast, Steven. So
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it would seem very like it would be rife with favoritism.
exactly. Yeah.
And actually, on that subject of homebrews, we don't just take homebrew creatures; we also take homebrew magic items, which we haven't got as many of. Which is, I mean, like no shade on anyone, but like those are something that you might have a few more of, or you might have some more ideas of. And if you don't have a full like stat block written out in the style of the Dungeon Master's Guide or whatever, like honestly, if you've got a cool idea, that's enough. Like we can riff off that. It's almost more fun if we don't have the full complete item.
Yeah,
but
if you want to give us like the name or like a sentence, then just go for it, and we can help you make one. We can give you an idea
absolutely.
for it. How to use it. Tim, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I learned recently that there's a podcast app for the Apple TV, and I got it up, and we're actually TV stars now because I can listen to our podcast on TV.
Yay.
So that's official. Yeah,
We're TV stars. So
so big.
Next episode of Creature Club on TV. Maybe someday we'll do like a talk show, or like a we'll film.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
It might be a bit of fun for the crowd.
like a live, just on Twitch or something. We could just have a chat.
Oh yeah, well that can
Set up a Creature Club Twitch.
That will happen if like people actually lots of people listen to us, which lots of people do. But
Yeah, actually, on that subject, I sent the boys our subscriber stats today, and we are still getting new listeners, which is really cool. We're kind of steadily growing, which is actually nice, to be honest. It's a good sign as far as I'm concerned that we obviously have a regular audience of people who like us, and occasionally someone new finds us, or someone who likes us shares us with someone else, and and that's perfect, honestly.
Yeah, and we still have a good enough number that, as I mentioned to Mikey earlier, we could still all be friends.
Yeah,
like I could
which is nice.
I could be friends with every single one of you people that are listening right now.
Yeah,
I mean, we're probably already friends with a good number of them, but
well, yeah, that's true. Makes things a little easier.
Although I don't, maybe I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
No, I mean we've got a lot of messages from people who we don't know in real life.
Yeah.
So it's definitely got to some places.
Yeah, we get lauded and we get criticized, and all of it is perfectly welcome as long as it's kind of a constructive criticism.
Yeah, as long as
which
don't be a dick about it. But that's honestly it.
We haven't had virtually any.
No one's been
negative feedback. Like it's all been constructive and helpful.
Yes, exactly.
And thank you to everybody who has kind of written in and with your ideas and suggestions and criticisms. It's heartwarming.
It is. It's very much so. If you've been listening week after week, then thank you so much. And if you listen every once in a while, then thank you very much as well. Just if you listen, thanks.
Yeah.
If you just press that subscribe button, and then happen to listen to the odd episode, then that's fine too. Like that's all fine.
If you're subscribed to Creature Club Podcast, you're a friend of Tim's.
Yep, just Tim. Me and Dan.
Just Tim,
it's a little bit tougher to get to me and Daniel.
Yeah. You have to be subscribed for over a year to unlock Daniel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like Tim is like bronze, and then eventually it goes
like
to
the intro.
It goes to like Dan silver, and then Mikey gold.
Yeah.
And then the fourth member of the podcast is your final unlock.
Yeah.
We'll never tell.
We'll find that out soon enough. You
have to be subscribed for a decade to find out.
Yeah, because
it's a long time away.
So we've had a secret fourth member in this podcast. Mm-hmm. Oh no, it's a Cloaker. He's been here.
Oh no!
I was actually
going to make the
Cyrus,
joke that it was that one episode that Zebo was in. She was our secret.
Fourth
Zebo. Member.
Oh yeah.
My cat.
Now that's deep lore.
Deep lore. Yeah, I thought I was going to say don't say who it was, and then let people
And then you did.
let people guess who
I can't-
Zebo was.
Yeah. Well, if I can't remember which episode it was, so if you can find that, let us know.
I thought Zebo was in like 2 episodes. Like,
Oh, she might be. She might be.
Zebo seems to show up every once in a while.
Yeah, she does.
Zebo's like-
she's a good little kid.
Zebo's like the friendliest cat ever.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. Real chill.
Yeah. Always says
Shout out to
Anytime.
Zebo.
whenever I give Tim a lift home, Zebo sometimes kind of just pops out and says hey.
Yeah.
And whenever she's not, I just say, Tim, say hi to Zebo for me, and then that's all I want.
I do.
Anyway, yeah, we just kind of been
we're just chatting because we like each other.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
because
We don't get to hang out that much.
yeah, this
so it's
episode
nice
kind
to
of
catch
ended
up.
a little bit earlier, so we decided to just start chatting.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry about that,
Leave
guys.
the old, leave a subscription and comment on the channel and
don't have
RSS
a-
your
we
feed.
don't have a
Feed your
channel.
RSSs.
Yeah, we don't have a
and,
channel.
We have an RSS
Smash that
feed,
like
which is-
button.
Smash that MF like button.
Although I was thinking, I've always had the idea of doing like D&D videos on YouTube, maybe, but
Yeah.
I might do it at some point for the crack. But I don't know what I would talk about that I haven't talked about in Creature Club, so that's what I have to figure out. So
How much you dislike us?
that's true, yeah. Hey, welcome to my show. It's like I hate Daniel and Tim.
It's all diss tracks.
Yeah, it is.
It's literally like, yeah. Honestly, that'd be great.
I would watch that, and I would be making it.
Yeah.
Cool. So
I would watch it.
next week, guys, we'll be going through the cockatrice.
Cockatrice. Yeah.
Cockatrice. Yeah.
Oh.
It's a pretty. I can tell it's pretty small snap block, but it's actually rich. I think it's rich with lore. It seems to be popped up in mythology and lots of other kind of places.
Yeah, it's very it's a mythological creature, so we'll run into that for a bit.
yeah.
I get to
so,
sink my teeth into a little more history.
Exactly. So join us next week where we do that. And anyway, for now, I have been Mikey.
I have been Tim.
And I've been Dan.
Stay cool.